说话不错的人，不错的，他一句说。
Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Geopolitical Hub. We are back here for our June 8th update of the Russian invasion into Ukraine. There's been some slight developments, nothing major, nothing too major, but there is movement on the ground everywhere. You can kind of tell that there's definitely offensives going on roughly all the 4 or 5 fronts over in Ukraine. But just to start things off, for the starters, the EU Parliament they actually voted for Ukraine candidacy status, as well as for the individuals that are in the EU to send weapons to Ukraine. I mean, I don't know how significant that is or where along in the process they are as far as getting that approved, or what type of weight that holds. But I just kind of want to start out with that because it's kind of been a soap opera between Germany and France, and kind of getting weapons over, as well as some certain countries kind of pushing back against Ukraine candidacy in the EU. But next off, the U.S., they actually plan to train, basically rotate platoons. All of this, of course, is contingent upon a platoon that they already have training right now on HIMARS, which are high mobility artillery rocket systems. Those are basically scoot and shoot systems. It's very, very hard to do counter artillery missions on these particular systems. Like I said, high mobility, so scoot and shoot. What that principle is just basically shooting and scooting, or basically getting out of the range, so they can't counter with your artillery barrage. So that's pretty big news there, because initially they were only stating that they were going to send over 4 HIMARS to Ukraine. I mean, anything is good, but of course they would want more for the coverage, especially seeing that in some areas, like they said, the artillery outnumbers Ukraine's in some areas 10-1. So as far as artillery pieces are concerned, I mean, I don't know how accurate that is, but I have heard those figures out there. But I mean, even if it was just 5-1, that's still serious. So the range on those HIMARS, I believe they are, I believe, 180 kilometers. Maybe not 180 kilometers. I think maybe 130 kilometers, or it maybe is 180 kilometers, but I know they cut the range down. They actually they basically took out a component that would allow that range, the maximum range, and now it is actually no, I'm sorry, the HIMARS is 300 kilometers. 300 kilometers, that's what it is. It's 300 kilometers, the maximum effective range of HIMARS, but they cut it down, I believe, to 80 kilometers. So they'll be able to reach, 130 kilometers. They'll be able to reach 130 kilometers. The Germans, as I was speaking of previously, the Germans, they're not sending weapons. Of course, they've been, the international world has kind of been on their backs about sending weapons over to Ukraine. But they are sending 500 troops to Lithuania to bolster that eastern front of the NATO border. And just right after that happened, Russia stated that they would no longer acknowledge the independence of Lithuania. So that's essentially a threat there. They've always been a threat. They're right on their doorstep. They're right there in the Baltics, right along with Estonia and Latvia, right in this area, the Baltic region. So as you can see, Lithuania is right here. I mean, they're not they don't have a border with Russia. Only place they have a border with Russia is in Kaliningrad, right here. That kind of little enclave that Russia has over here, based off of I forget which treaty it was, but I'm pretty sure it was right around the World War II era, one of World War II or World War One. Pretty sure World War II, where they rested upon these lines here in the treaty. The Moscow chief rabbi has actually fled to Israel after refusing to bow down to pressures to endorse the war in Ukraine. It's kind of interesting to see how this is going to change things over in Israel. I know that Ukraine, they were looking into purchasing or possibly acquiring the dome. Everyone knows about the dome, the Israel dome, basically counter artillery, counter anything, missiles, rockets, anything that comes in is kind of impenetrable. They've been kind of trying to lobby to get that asset from Israel, but at this point in time, Israel has blocked it. But with the rabbi going back to Israel due to pressure, I wonder if that may change things. It may not, but it's just something to look out for, to see if that possibly tips the scales in any direction. They're also getting complaints from the Russian populace regarding maltreatment as well as lack of preparation of Russian troops. Of course, we know about it's supposed to be the second largest military, or second best and second most capable military in the world. But we see the type of equipment that they're rolling around in. Of course, they're pulling out the T-62s, which is basically the oldest tank that they have. They're pulling those out of storage, and they're shipping those over to the West, which we'll be covering that a little bit later in this update. But yeah, we all know about that. We know about also the 35th Combined Arms Army in the Izium region. They're actually almost out of commission. They're essentially because if you know anything about Izium, outside of Izium to the west of Izium, it's basically forest to the west of Izium. So what happened was that regiment pulled into the forest, and what happened when they pulled into the forest is, I'm not sure whether they were not able to make any type of fortifications as far as trenches, anything overhead, anything just to be able to protect their vehicles and as well as protect their personnel. I'm not sure about, the capabilities that they had there, or if they were given the opportunity to. But what happened is basically they were stuck in the tree line. And what happens when you get shelled in the tree line is most of the time the artillery actually hits the trees. It hits the trees, and then what happens is it fragments. So if you can imagine an artillery shell hitting a tree above you, and it, all the fragments coming down on the actual soldier, the soldiers that are sitting in the perimeter or in the area of that artillery barrage. So if you can kind of imagine, that's kind of decimated their equipment as well as their manpower. That's the basically the story of the 35th Combined Army. If you wanted to look that up, it's a pretty intriguing story out of Izium. Moving forward, and there was a lawmaker who is a part of President Zelensky's party. Essentially what happened was he celebrated the occupation, the Russian occupation, publicly, and he was kicked out of the parliament as well as the party of President Zelensky. He actually went down and celebrated in the region of Kherson. Of course, we know in our previous video we spoke of the ex-mayor of the Kherson region, I believe either mayor or governor, who was actually a collaborator, and they have him on charges of treason. So Also, Japan, this is out of the area, but Japan actually has boosted ties to NATO based on the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Of course, we know that Japan has disputes with Russia in the Pacific Ocean regarding I believe, the Kuril Islands, and there's just some other land masses over there. They have border disputes with China as well. Over in I believe Vladivostok. I believe it's called Vladivostok, over on the eastern and Siberian regions of Russia. But yeah, Japan has boosted ties with NATO. So if you can imagine that, I mean, if boosting ties with NATO, it has to be some type of defensive pact. So that's, if Russia was worried about, their neighbor to the west, I mean, now they kind of have a makeshift NATO to the east with Japan. Of course, those ties aren't there fully, and NATO aren't obligated to attack if Japan gets attacked by anyone. But I'm pretty sure there's some defensive pacts that are written into that agreement, and we'll expound on that later in one of our later updates moving forward. Germany stated they will not send the MRLS system, or the multi-rocket launch systems to Ukraine until after summer. They stated that they are waiting on a software update that will allow the artillery piece, or the MLARS, the rocket system, to launch both U.S. and British artillery rounds. So, I mean, I'm not sure how true that is. I mean, there's been, whispers going around. I don't know if they're whispers anymore, but I mean, people are pretty out loud and boisterous about it. But they're basically stating that these aren't true claims, and that it's just basically an excuse. But we'll see. Hopefully, we don't have to wait until after summer, because things are pretty serious now. But we'll see. We'll definitely see what happens with Germany and those MRLSs, and also the other equipment that they're kind of holding up that other countries want to send over, like the Leopard tanks, and also the Martyrs. And finally, as far as Russia's concerned, before we get into the maps, we have some Russian artillery that's malfunctioning. It's actually, they're having propellant charge explosions. Essentially, what's happening is, the barrel is blowing up when the artillery is fired. So, and this is basically due to poor storage. We know that we know how well Russia stores their equipment, and their policies, or their SOPs as far as storing their equipment. They're not as top notch, as far as maybe the United States. Kind of do everything by the book. It's not the same way in Russia. But yeah, Russia is definitely having issues with their artillery firing, because they're having that malfunction due to the poor storage. Heading over into the maps. Let's see here. Let's get down into Ukraine. I know we talked about the Russian BTGs along this area in Sumy and Chernihiv. What I believe that was, because there are other reports stating that there was, I know we reported that Belarus was doing drills again. What I think might have been happening, because we didn't get any reports, but we did get reports that Russian troops were moving into Belarus. So maybe they're moving into Belarus for that training. I'm not quite sure. But I think that might have been those troops, those 3 BTGs that were along Chernihiv. But we'll keep an eye out on what's going on from here moving forward. We'll keep an eye out on that region. Of course, we always report out of that region. In Kharkiv, not much happening here. As you know, like I said, turn ahead of their back and forth here. They actually were able to split. Ukraine has been holding this for a couple of days now, but I mean, it's no guarantee that they'll hold on to it. But there have been some reports from Nove right here. I know there were reports yesterday and the other report that there was fighting going on here and that they potentially had liberated this area. They also have stated that there haven't been any troops here in this area here. So, Ukrainian forces have been able to move up into this area of Nove, and that's roughly about 5 miles from the border of Russia. But as we know, yesterday there was action here. I'm not sure if that we didn't get confirmation that they took this. What's that? Supivka. Supivka. I'm trying to get in the. I'm from the United States, so we really don't. And I'm actually in the southwestern part of the United States, so I'm able to roll my R's. And used to the Spanish and so on and so forth, but I'm getting used to just the Ukrainian dialect, trying to pronounce these words. So. Let's see here, but yeah, that's it for this area. Nothing else happening in Kharkiv. As we move down into Izium, as I said previously, the lines are right around this area. Coming up, the Russian lines are right around here, coming up all the way up towards this river here. But what they're saying is the Russians in the Izium area are catching contact from the east. They're catching major contact from the east. I mean, not the east, but their western flank or their right flank. These troops moving in here because there's plenty of troops that are trying to come down into Sloviansk. Of course, we've been in this area here for some time now. I've heard reports that there's still some fighting on this side of the bridge. I've heard some reports that there were Russian troops on this side here, just due to the because they stated that at this point in time, and especially in this area, that the water isn't as deep. So it is true, even though the bridge was blown, this bridge across the Seversky Donetsk River was blown. This water might be shallow enough to where amphibious vehicles can pass through this area. There has been no confirmations at this point in time, but we'll keep an eye on that. Of course, like I said, they've been assaulting down in this area, assaulting this road, and assaulting this area here to no avail. They weren't able to move into that area. Coming over here to Lyman, they stated that Ozern was the last city or village that was under Ukrainian control north of the Seversky Donetsk River. So I haven't heard anything about that regarding that area today. So I'm guessing it's still being controlled. Whoever the forces are here, I'm pretty sure they'll do what, all the other forces did north of the Seversky Donetsk River, and that's, bail out to the south of the Seversky Donetsk River. Moving along here. Over in the Severodonetsk city, right now they're basically saying 50%. That's where I'm resting at right now. There's a lot of fighting going on in the city at this point in time. These special forces of Ukraine are working heavily at night. We got reports that they actually were able to clear out the center of Severodonetsk. But due to artillery fire being called in, they were forced to kind of go back to that eastern portion. But what we go back to is what's the actual end game here. What are they trying to accomplish here? And like I said, I believe that they're trying to get as many casualties as possible, because like we said, in Lysychansk, this is 100 meters higher. 100 meters higher. And after we finish talking about this area, I'll give you a video showing you, what it looks like real time in the Severodonetsk region when you're looking from Lysychansk and that higher elevation. But I believe what's happening is they're just basically trying to mow down as many Russians as possible. That's essentially what they're trying to. I believe they're trying to lure them into the kill zone, and of course launch, down into Severodonetsk. Because if they get the HIMARS, if they get those HIMARS in this region in Lysychansk, and also the MRLSs, the multi rocket launch systems, if they get those into Lysychansk, even just a couple of batteries, then it would be severe. It would be severe because it's only 5 miles from Lysychansk into Severodonetsk, if that, maybe 3 miles. So that the range on that is significant. The range on that will be able to touch far back into the Russian lines. So far back into the Russian lines, far back into ammo depots, so on and so forth. So that's the big thing about those high mobility artillery rocket systems and also the MRLSs. MLRSs. Those systems are essential right now, as far as just because the manpower that Russia has. Ukraine needs some type of asset that's capable of beating them back and actually touching them without having to risk their assets. So we'll keep an eye out on things that happen in the Severodonetsk region. What I'm hearing along this highway is that they're actually dug in. Ukrainian troops are dug in along here, and I'm not sure if they're. Well, I'm pretty sure their vehicles are dug in, but I think this is higher altitude. Not higher altitude, but higher elevation. Just one more. Let's check here. You can look at the terrain. Yep, there we go. So see, there's higher terrain up in here, right up in this area. There's higher terrain, and then the road is in a valley. So what I believe is they're actually dug in to where it's hard for any type of artillery to reach over because of the heights. But they're able to lob up at higher elevations. They're able to lob their artillery up, but the artillery that they're lobbing is going over because of these individuals down on this supply route, their positions, how they're dug in. That's what I believe. I just want more clarification on that. We just heard that they were very effective in this region along Berestov. We heard that Russians actually taken heavy casualties, actually trying to attack down into Berestov. So we'll keep a further eye on that moving forward as well. And also into Popasna. Some areas down to the southeast, we've heard that Russian troops have been moving down in this area, moving through here and trying to capture. Well, basically, they're capturing small villages. I believe everybody's basically probably retreated over to Bakhmut. I'm pretty sure they have a force here. but there hasn't been too much of anything going on in this direction to to make a headline about. There's not much going on over there. Down here, there was reports of some movement. I'm not sure about how much movement they're having down in this area. We have the Donetsk area, and we have the Marinka area, and I believe this was the area that they stated they attacked, and they had some possibly had some success attacking here in Krasnohorivka. Yeah, I believe that's how you pronounce that. But other than that, not much else down in that Donetsk region. Like I said, they've been really a stalemate. As we know, there's fighting all in Mariupol and also Arikiv. This area here, we know there was a storage that detonated here, ammo depot detonated there. Over in Mariupol, Mariupol is actually just going through kind of like a humanitarian crisis, really, because there's still 10,000 civilians there, and they've actually stated that the medical situation is at a catastrophic level as far as the lack of medical personnel in Mariupol. And on top of the cholera breakout, that's kind of the worst situation to have. They're also kind of, I don't know if they're forcing them, but they're quote unquote urging individuals up to 80 years old, older than 80 years old, medical professionals who are retired. They're actually trying to urge them out of retirement. We know what urging means. We know what urging means in Russian language. So I'm pretty sure those individuals don't have much of a choice. But yeah, 100,000 civilians still trapped there. I believe there's no running water there, no electricity there. Serious times going on there in Mariupol. There were exchanges. They have been exchanging bodies between Russia and Ukraine. I know earlier in the invasion, Ukraine was, and they were still, up until this time, they were complaining about the amount of space the Russians were taking up in their refrigeration storages, the bodies that the Russians weren't claiming, because of course, if the only way to dispel casualty rumors, as we said, those casualty numbers are state secret. So the only way to dispel that, is to not claim the bodies. So they were leaving the bodies over, not claiming the bodies. But now what they're doing in the ZP region is they're actually, or the Zaporizhia region. I think we could pronounce that now. I think we can do away with the ZP region. But the Zaporizhia region, they're actually exchanging bodies using the 50 for 50 principle, which basically is 50 bodies for 50 bodies. But they are getting those bodies back, and they actually got some on the last one out of 50, 37 were actually bodies of the individuals who were down, holed up in Azovstal, the steel plant down in Mariupol. So, I mean, that's of course good for the families getting those bodies back. Also, what Ukraine is, not Ukraine, but what Russia is trying to do is Russia's trying to steal electricity from the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. They've actually tried to hook that grid up to the Russian grid. They actually tried to hook that nuclear power plant up to the Russian grid, and they're actually trying to sell electricity back to Ukraine. That's you can't make this up. You definitely can't make this up. But they actually stated that this was very, very, very dangerous. It could be catastrophic consequences trying to do this. So, I mean, like I said, this hasn't happened. These are just progressions. Of course, they're trying to do it referendums down in the Kherson region, the ZP region, or Zaporizhia region. They're basically trying to domesticate southern Ukraine and into making it Russian. So over in Vasilivka, as we spoke of before, there's actually 30 T-62s that we talked about before. Those old. Right now they're in T-90s, I believe. Yeah, T-90s. I think those are the most modernized tanks. They have 30 T-62s that have been basically stationed or parked in long-term firing positions, basically fortified firing positions. So they've been fortifying this area, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be if there's any type of offensive, like I said, which they're having offensive here. You can hear some fighting going on in Orkiv as well as Mariupol. But right over here, they have those dug in. So, we'll see what happens. And like I said, those are T-62, so those are very, very outdated versions of Russian armor. Very outdated. Moving over to Kherson, of course, we know about Mariupol. They're moving individuals out of the border, the checkpoints in Mariupol. Down in Kherson region, let's go over to our bridgehead, because there's been some developments here. There was an offensive around Bila Kranistinia. I'm guessing I tried, but there were offensives, Russian offensive going towards this city, as well as another city along, which is Lazov, along the this river here, the Inhulets River. Their reports are, which we'll try to confirm this a little bit later, but there are reports that the Russians might have lost up to 1 BTG, and we already know before there was only 7 BTGs here. Of course, there was some movement up into the Kherson region trying to reinforce that area, but there were reports that upon trying to remove this bridgehead from Davidid Brid down to Adrivka. That's kind of where that bridgehead is from here to here, which is looks roughly about 5 miles long, 5 to 7 miles long. They're trying to remove them from that bridgehead and take control of the river again, but they lost and they had to fall back, and they stated that they lost possibly up to 1 BTG in that offensive and that counterattack. They've also had probing attacks over in our favorite place, over in Kherson. We've been reporting some explosions happening here. Of course, this is where the airport is. This is where, like I said, the Ukrainian artillery and also Air Force, they've had plenty of luck here. They have plenty of success here in Chernobivka. There's been actually over the past 24 to 48 hours some explosions, and basically reports that basically there were rounds cooking off as if they had hit Chernobivka again. Chernobivka again. If this has happened again, I mean, this has been, at least 5 times, I believe around 5 times that Russian equipment has been hit at this particular place at the airport, or the airfield at Chernobivka. But they've actually stated that there's been some probing Ukrainian attacks going on along here. Nothing serious at this point in time yet, but there has been some probing attacks and some explosions. So it might be them softening them up. I know we spoke about them actually getting down into Bahaudatni within the past 24 to 48 hours. So they're definitely moving in towards this area to possibly overtake Kherson. That's why we've been seeing them resupply and reinforce down from Mariupol and the more southern regions. Down in this area here in the Black Sea, as we've been speaking of before, they had a meeting today, the 8th. Of course, it's the 9th right now in Ukraine and Turkey, but they had a meeting in Turkey regarding these grain exports. That meeting was between Russia and Turkey, Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, but of course Ukrainian officials were not invited to that meeting. I'm not sure why, but Erdogan, he actually met with Sergei Lavrov. Sergei Lavrov went down to discuss the grain exports, and what Ukraine mostly wanted was guarantees that Russia would not use the corridor for grain export out of Odessa to launch any type of offensive towards Odessa, because we know, as we spoke of before, those 15 landing ships that were basically sitting there in the queue in the Black Sea, roughly 100 kilometers out, as we spoke about in our previous updates. So that's interesting there. That's good things, because of course we don't want famine around the world, because it exacerbate the situation. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with Putin, so we'll see at this point in time. Right now, there's only 20 million tons of grain that they can export if they don't open up the ports. There's only 20 million. There's only a capacity of 20 million tons that they can export, and that is down 62% from the 45 million tons that they exported back in 2021. So you can see with those numbers, that's a pretty significant drop due to the blockade of the Odessa ports and the other ports in the Black Sea of Ukraine. But that's it for our update for today. Our June 8th update. We'll be updating again tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Like I said, there's a lot of movement going on in the southern regions, incursion, as well as the ZP region is starting to heat up. Severodonetsk, we all know about that area, as well as Izium is starting to heat up. So, it's a lot going on, and we'll definitely have another update or two for you. If enough happens, we might have to start doing 2 updates a day. But anything to get you guys the information. But like, comment, and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you here tomorrow. And thank you guys for tuning in. Take it easy.